Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a more soft-spoken episode because I'm out late at night. My neighbors are asleep. I just got this sort of, I don't know what you call it. It's not really a hunch. Just this drive to do this particular episode. I think I'm going to call this Manifesting from Fear. Something like that. It's going to be one of those episodes where you don't exactly know where I'm going, and a lot of people will probably skip over it because it doesn't make any sense. Certainly it's not going to be any keyword thing. I mean, I try to make the descriptions be sort of the more on-point keywords of what an esoteric episode might be about. Here's the thing. I get a lot of people coming to me because they sense that I'm very relaxed and very calm, and they know I've had a life that is anything but that. It's not horrific, right? And they're not talking about horrific situations. They're talking about life experiences, right? Many of you are exactly the same way. Many of you have done countless things beyond any of us. But they come to me because they're not calm. I have an episode, people ask me, do you do an episode on like sort of calming down? And it's, I believe I called it Calming Your Soul. That's the episode if you need the real, just on point episode about relaxing yourself and sort of identifying the things in your life that may cause chaos in your mind. We're not going to repeat that episode here. What this episode is going to be about is the stuff that happens inside of our mind, within the circle of our life, meaning more of the things that we control, that we outwardly do, and then the things that happen to us in the world. And there's going to be a whole thread of the incidental things that occur and the things that we don't consciously control, then some of the things we do control, and then, last but not least, the stuff that is inflicted upon us through this emotion we call fear. If I said to you, how do you get love? Well, love is one of those almost definitionless words, right? To use a word that probably doesn't exist. You love things. Hopefully you love yourself. Hopefully when you see a mirror, you love yourself. Now, you're not a narcissist. You don't sit there and look at yourself all day, but you look in the mirror like, hey man, warts and all, I'm pretty fucking cool, right? Because you should. That's your Uncle Deep Thoughts giving you some advice. Don't let anyone guilt trip you out of appreciating yourself. Go see my episode on ego if you're worried about getting out of control in that area. But to get right to it, we manifest our lives way too often out of this emotion, fear. And we don't identify fear as something that's around us, that has an identity, that we can control. We sort of think of fear, and I don't mean to brainwash you by saying statements as if they are true when they may not be true for you, so I apologize if that's what it sounds like. For me, it's that way. Fear is not something I think about on a daily basis. I don't have a ton of fear. I definitely don't have huge fears. I may have small little concerns here and there, which you could put in the fear category. A small fear is a concern. A big fear is a fear. And the problem is if we don't identify something as truly existing around us, as a part of what we can transition our brains into, and we have a state change from being happy to fearful, then we're not in control. And I did a whole episode on trauma journalism. It's a phrase I coined way back 10 years ago on a website called onepagenews.com, probably more than 10 years ago. I covered a little bit more in an episode about the right brain, the left brain. I don't want to really get into the chemical structure in your brain. I may touch on it, but that's not the thrust of this. We're not going to do a repeat to the best of my ability. Both love and fear shouldn't be things that are completely incidental in your life. It's okay to be surprised by love, of course. That's some of the best love you'll ever find in your life. But fear? Fear shouldn't be in our lives at all. Now, a purist might say, well, that's ridiculous. You need fears to keep yourself from getting eaten by a lion and burning yourself and taking too many drugs or whatever. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of that can just be filed into common sense. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about an incidental moment where you climbed over a fence and you realize that there's a pit bull training camp and they're all hungry and your food. What I'm talking about is when you forget that fear exists for a split second and you live a wonderful moment in your life, right? Because life is nothing but a collection of events, right? You can choose to have them or not have them. It's your choice. And sometimes when we're more carefree, beautiful things occur. Sometimes when we're more carefree, we do silly things that we should have never done. There's probably a lot of us in this world due to two people doing something very carefree. There was a moment in my childhood when the subject matter came around that either parents planned for you to exist or you were quote unquote an accident. And it get to the point where you had to prove to yourself that your parents really wanted you. Otherwise, if you were an accident, then you were an accident. And that means your purpose on this earth is kind of marginalized. And I say nonsense, bullshit. Two people love each other, things happen, and you're coming out of that moment. Whether or not they love each other 5 minutes after it's over, it doesn't matter. We're here. You are you. And how you came into this world means nothing in the long run. But back to fear. We allow fear to cause us to manifest our realities in one direction versus another way too much. And because this is such a key factor in the world and how it works, those who control the world create as much of it as they possibly can. Problem, reaction, solution, right? As David Icke would say. But we didn't need that axiom to understand how a dog keeps the sheep going into the barn or the cattle, right? What's the difference between a crisis happening around the public and crisis happening around those who are trained to deal with crises? Well, the public panics and is sort of a big pain in the ass right in the middle of this chaotic event. But the trained professionals, well, that's what they've been trained to do. They've been trained to stay cool. It doesn't mean their adrenaline isn't pumping. It doesn't mean their heart rate didn't just go up 2x. But they are trained to respond and keep their cool and their brain all intact. And they've got strategies to deal with chaos of a particular type. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that if you live in any state of fear for any reason, whether it be irrational or irrational, whether you can explain it or you can't explain it, you can start developing this resistance to it. And as soon as you start developing any level of resistance to fear, you start to gain something we call control. I want you to have as much control over your mind and your soul while you are temporarily human as you can possibly attain in this journey. I have no idea if you take it with you. I have no idea if you brought any control with you when you got here. But we'll let that answer come when we leave this world. It won't help us today. We've got to deal with the vessel we're in today. It dawned on me the other day. Well, I was thinking about population control and all the horrible mechanisms that they're engaging in to kill us off early, kill us off instantly, that I had missed a huge sociological behavior anomaly that happens. It's not really even an anomaly, because anomalies are sort of unexplained things. A sort of interesting side effect, or maybe intended effect, that I've known my whole life, and you have too if you're over 40 years old probably. But maybe you never identified it either. I've play tested this with a bunch of my friends, and no one got it, because I hadn't got it until recently. What do we call the generation after, or before, Gen X? We call them the baby boomers. All right. What's that mean? Well, they always tell you, well, right after World War II, there was a baby boom. A baby boom. We made a ton of people in the United States of America. I don't know if it happened in Europe. I'm pretty sure something similar probably occurred. But why did that occur? If you ask somebody what a baby boomer is, what do they say? Because the war ended and everyone felt relaxed. The fear of the Third Reich rolling over the entire world disappeared in a flash. And Mom and Dad loosened up the old belts and whatever, aprons, and we got a ton of people. So war creates fear, and fear makes parents or potential parents stop procreating if they're sentient to what is going on, if they have the ability to look forward in time and say, oh my God, do we really want to bring a bunch of children in a world where they might have to worship Adolf Hitler? And so they all paused. My dad and his brother are 12 years apart. My father was born in 1946. I mean, right after the war, man. Boom. I mean, you got to get pregnant, you got to hold on to the child for 9 months, and then you give birth. He was conceived in 1945. His brother was 12 years earlier. So what was it like 12 years earlier? Let's dial back the Wayback Machine. It's 1934, and his brother was born. Which means, and I know that his brother was conceived in 1933 because of his birthday. No one was a preemie. And what was going on in 1933? Well, the Depression had reached its apex pretty much around 34. Now, all newlyweds back in those days wanted to have kids. It was the imperative. You call yourself a parent, you call yourself a man or a woman, well, you're going to definitely need to have a child to, to commensurate your wedding, right? Let's bless this thing. But now stuff happens in your life, right? Stuff happens in your life and you need to make changes in your life. And fear is the mother of invention half the time. I've said it 100 times on this show. We have got a lot of amazing people in history, man and woman, who became amazing because they had fear. They were broke. They needed to do something. A lot of businesses started, a lot of products and amazing things have happened because no one had any money to eat, and so they had to do something. I have benefited from this in my life more times than I could count. So what am I talking about? Am I going to get rid of fear and then we're all sitting around like stoners, not doing anything with our life? No. But what I'm talking about is bringing it into the forefront of your mind, in the foreground of your thought, and look at it. What the fuck is fear? Nobody wants to think about fear. How many of you sit around at Thanksgiving dinner and you go, we need to watch it, or after Thanksgiving dinner, and you say, or a holiday dinner if you're not in America, and you say, what do we do? We've already eaten dinner. This is great. The kids have opened their presents or whatever's going on. And someone says, I know. Let's get out the DVDs of 9/11 and watch the planes crash into the World Trade Centers. Let's watch something else horrific in history or something. Now, Scary Movie's a little bit different because you all can say it's fictional. But no one sits around watching horrific moments that make you fear. We don't bring fear up to dominate it. We get it out of our life just as fast as we possibly can. And maybe we shouldn't do that. Am I saying we're going to be taught to live in fear in this episode? Hell no. But what we're going to do is make it our bitch. We're going to take its impulsive qualities, its invasive qualities that do nothing but harm us, and we're going to strip that away. And you'll find out it's probably just the surface of this thought that's creating this fear. And what is left is the rational thing that you probably need to consider, the risk. And instead of having your heart palpitate and your brain go into a fight or flight and lose its ability to add anything more to it than a logical outcome, which can be handy too, we're going to keep that side of our brain. We're going to keep both sides of our brain functioning. We're going to look at it. How many times have you seen a movie where there's a MacGyver type scene where there's a bomb that needs to be deactivated and it's got a few seconds to go? Gary Oldman in Fifth Element had one of these moments when he was trying to deactivate the bomb that's in the door with his little key card. There's a bomb counting down and he's got his gun. He's running towards this hotel room inside this big ship floating in space. And he knows that if he keeps the panic going in his mind, when he reaches up to put the card in the little slit to turn off the bomb, if he keeps in that panic mode, his mechanical command of his body is probably not going to be as accurate as it needs to be. So the actor beautifully created this moment where he pulls this card out. If he drops it on the ground, he's going to create a delay that will probably kill him. And you see him take a breath. And he calmly puts it in there. Boom. And he nails it 5 seconds before it's about to kill him. That's sort of what I'm talking about. Turning the sort of irrational ability to process the information and make it rational again. So let's break it down. How do we do this? What am I talking about? Have you ever been shocked in your life? And I don't mean with electricity, although that experience is very similar to what I'm talking about. Someone said something that just blew your mind. And maybe in a positive way, but how about a non-positive way? And for a minute, the information is so intense, so illogical in your mind, that you couldn't process it. I got a call once that a very good friend of mine and someone I idolized in high school, who I just spent the night before playing pinball with and really getting to meet for the first time solo, right? We didn't have our friends. He and I were about 3 years apart. So he was hard to get access to. Maybe he's only 2, but he and I had this routine, and we were meeting each other at this gas station. I've described this whole thing in a different episode. And I was feeling good, you know. The gas station was literally, I don't know, a fifth of a mile away from my house. And I woke up the next day, and my girlfriend says to me, she calls me, maybe before cell phones. She knows the deal. And she said to me, you know, you might want to sit down. And I thought, there's nothing this girl's going to tell me that could really make it necessary for me to sit down. And then she said that my buddy Randy had died the night before in a horrific accident just outside of town, and that like 3 other people died too. And one guy was in critical condition, who has since recovered, thank God. It was shocking. It was shocking. It didn't really bring fear into my soul, but it shocked me. And I remember sitting there for a few seconds, just a few seconds, trying to wrap my mind around having the very vivid memory. It was just literally maybe 8 hours before being with this person. And you know, when you like somebody, you really remember them. You know, it's like if you met your favorite rock star, your favorite actor, or whatever, scientist, you totally remember everything about him. He's wearing that red shirt and he had that thing, he had that ring. It was kind of cool. It was weird. And it was like that for me. You could be outside and there's a car accident. I was sitting in my smoke lounge and a guy runs by firing a pistol at his friend driving out of the parking lot. For a second there you're going, is this really happening? And that's the veneer, the first irrational coating around this emotional bubble that's coming at you. This rational thought is wrapped in this irrational layer. If you can just get that into your head, let that sink in a little bit, then you start to have control. If we saw, like I always say, if you see a UFO for the very first time, and let's say it's a miniature UFO, if it's 4 feet wide, it could fit underneath this awning and fly over my head. Maybe not even bump the camera. It's glowing white, it's phosphorus. Hopefully I don't die of radiation. But let me tell you, yours truly would be just filling his pants with everything I got as quick as possible. But now think about it. Let's say because that happened and it flies away and it never comes back that night, I come out and do this again and do it again. And he keeps coming by. Foof, foof, foof. Okay, so about first, 3 or 4 times, I'm going to be crapping myself one way or the other, somehow. But on the 10th time, the 15th time, it's going to be like an old friend dropping by. He's buzzing my show, right? I would set up other cameras on the second one, just so you guys know. But this is the sort of erosion that'll start happening to fears once you start realizing that that fear really exists and that you can think about fears when you have none in you. But now what do we do when we have fears? Fears freak us out. And sometimes they don't have anything to do with our destiny. They don't have anything to do with our lives. They're simply things that are happening outside of our immediate space or in our immediate space. But it's nothing to do with us. We may not even be at all in danger. We might take notes to make sure that whatever did happen in front of us doesn't happen to us. But, it happens. You get shocked and terrified, and it's you witnessing something. I'm starting with the outside ones because those are the most simple ones to describe. But it's the ones inside of us that are the most devious, right? The most difficult to control. The most sort of off-schedule emotions that we have, right? How many times have you met someone who just worries all the time? They just worry all the time about everything. And you don't. You don't sit around not worrying about anything, but your worries are very strategic. You have them, you resolve the issue, and you stop worrying. And you never really get to level 9, but they're on 11 constantly. And the weird thing is that sometimes those lives will be the most precious, perfect lives that you could put your finger on. And sometimes that's the reason why the person's worrying in the first place. You'll talk to them. You'll say, "What are you worrying about?" And they'll say, "Well, look at my life. It is the most perfect life in the world. I married the right person. I had all the kids I ever wanted to have, and every single one of them's behaved. I live in a beautiful neighborhood. I've always lived in a great neighborhood. I can go wherever I want in the world, relatively speaking. And so I worry about losing everything." Well, to your mind, you would say, if I ever woke up with that, if you're not a worrywart, you just say, well, yeah, I'd have that moment. I'd take inventory and I'd go out and hug people and tell them I love them. And when there's no chemtrails in the sky, you just go outside and take a big deep breath. And you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. You stretch in bed, you take an extra long shower, and you just go, thank you, God, for my life. I like to call worries slow fears. If you could take the pulse of a fear, the full cycle of a fear, just boom, and you pull that wave and you elongate it out, you're going to get a worry. It's a slow fear, and it fucks with you, and it toys with you. We need control of our lives. We need control of our minds. We have to take inventory of what's in our lives that's causing us to be fearful or worrywarts. And then we have to do whatever we can to pick all the low-hanging fruit, which means remove things out of your life that makes you fearful. People, things. Some people have irrational fears, so the problem is that they can't remove the thing that they fear. It's just a necessity of life. Could be a car. Could be an oven. When I was a kid, I grew up with electric ovens. And they are one of the worst inventions on planet Earth. And I moved to California. They don't have electric ovens in a lot of places. Everyone uses gas because it's much more efficient. It immediately heats things up. Right? Fire is fire. You don't need to wait for fire to get hot. Fire, if it exists, is already heating up whatever pan, whatever contents are in that pan quickly. It's just behind a microwave, which is really funny. But there are things that we can't control. Once you have a child, you'll know fear in a different way. But at some point, you just have to trust the universe. But sometimes things happen and our fears are confirmed. And so we feel justified in manifesting this harvesting of fears. We go out and we plant them in our brains. You'll say, I've got the right to fear this. I've got the right to fear that. I got the right to fear that. Oh, that happened. And I doubted myself once and then this happened. So I get to keep this fear. And so everything that we plant sabotages our future when the harvest comes. Sometimes it's just a plant that's alive and well and we just keep watering it. How many of you saw 9/11 and you believed it and you were terrified? Now you look at it and you're like, man, if I was there that day, the things I would do to find the evidence, to calm everybody down, because I know what happened and I know it didn't happen. I don't know everything, but I know it didn't happen, and that's where my fear was. For those of you who've been to boot camp, you're going to really get this one. For those of you who haven't, just try to live this scenario in your brain. If you've seen it on TV, if you ever watched Full Metal Jacket, this will make some sense to you. But if you haven't, let's review. The way that boot camps are designed is they tear you down and build you back up. As soon as you get off the bus, they're yelling at you. In fact, before you even get off, they'll climb on the bus and they'll get in your face. And there are dozens of drill sergeants screaming into your ear. Part of that tactic is the trauma tactic. It's a mind control tactic. When your brain is overwhelmed with electricity, it can't discern information that well. There's too much. So screaming at you is literally the way that MKUltra program ended, which was sonic waves into the brain. Instead of shock wave into your brain, they use sonic energy or sonic sounds in your mind, and it overwhelms your brain, and it puts you in a neutral suggestibility state of mind. But they scream, and they scream, and they scream to erase who you were when you arrived. In a lot of cases, these kids need to have just about every bit of their gangbanger bullshit or their entitled bullshit erased. Because accountability is about to arrive, right? Or it has arrived. A fear in your brain creates a feedback loop. Usually. It's a state of trauma. What happens when you put a microphone right next to the amplifier that the microphone is actually feeding? Signal comes out, sound comes out of the speaker, goes into the microphone, it keeps going back and forth, and what does it do? It gets louder and louder until you've got to pull the hot mic away. Well, a fear is a thought that has no home in your mind. And when I say home, I mean it has no rational place to exist. Again, if the UFO flew over my head, it wouldn't have any rational place to exist in my mind for a split second. I would be thinking, why are you so small? Why the hell are you flying over me? Why are you doing a buzz underneath my awning? After a while, that part would start to find a rationale in my head. Well, I don't know why he's doing this. He's doing this. Proverbial he. But eventually I'd start acting rational about it. You start thinking scientific about it, perhaps. So the first thing we have to do in order to unwrap a fear is to very quickly realize that you got to pull the microphone away from the speaker. And you have to do it almost instantaneously in your brain, or as quick as you possibly can, to unravel it. Now, there are people with physical issues that perhaps they're having other things affecting their body, and that is going to be tougher for them. But everyone who gets out of a problem like this has a technique, and it's usually different between people. How many times have you ever discussed something with someone where There were several ways to skin the cat, as they say. There were several ways to do a particular thing. And you get with a bunch of like-minded people and you're like, well, how did you do it? Oh, I did this. I had a guy that taught me this little trick over here, and then I did that thing, and it worked. And so I just stuck with it. And the other person who never was taught that, maybe they figured it out on their own. Well, I found if I put my foot like this, and The guy that can turn off the bomb is a person that can walk up to it like MacGyver, who's got a huge ego, and he can sit there and he goes, I understand the basics about how all this works, which means I can take that fundamental knowledge and remove the green wire or the red wire. And then it turns off. Boom, he's safe. Think about fears when you don't have them. And that's the first thing that will start to erode the UFO that goes over your head. The shock and awe of a fear will go away. It'll subside. So let's talk about a few fears. One of the things that bothers me the most is when you go to bed at night and you have something that's freaking you out. Maybe you can't pay your bills. Bills are a great one. I love bills. If you've ever had a situation where you barely had any money, but the bills don't give a shit, and so you have to get creative with your financing. And if you try to go to bed without resolving your financing to some satisfactory degree, you won't be able to sleep. Oh, you may doze off for an hour, but you'll wake back up again. Maybe you'll have a dream that's very archetypal, very symbolic to this problem, and you'll wake back up again. And you don't get to sleep until you've thought of where you're going to find that money. And the worst thing is if it takes time. You're like, maybe, I've been there, man. Just so you know, I've been there. And, you have possessions in your house. You're like, well, I don't need that crap. Let's just sell it. And you find out, man, you can sell stuff on Craigslist or whatever. And shit, man, you made $1,000. You never knew. Sold 2 or 3 things. Amazing, right? Now let's take it down a notch. It's a single bill. Your life's not in peril. It could get a little embarrassing if you have to tell someone you can't pay them because you got to pay this other person, or you can't pay rent in full because you got this other thing you got to do. You got hit, car got hit, and you got an extra bill you got to pay. Whatever. But what do I always say on the show? How many bills have you worried about that got paid? They got paid. Your life didn't end. The cops didn't show up at 4 o'clock in the morning to put you in handcuffs because you didn't pay your cable bill, because you didn't pay your rent. Maybe a big bill. No. Now someone might sue you or something in the worst case scenario, but in the end, you're still alive, you're okay, and it got paid. Most of us don't have any of those stories. I don't have any of those stories. But man, when I was in my early 20s, holy hell, from 17 to, God, probably 25 years old when I started really rolling in the dough, maybe 23, 5 good years, 6 good years. It was horrible. My bank account was bounced so damn much that I probably got more statements in the mail for insufficient funds than any other junk mail. But I survived. All those bills got paid. I never screwed anybody. But now let's think about it. Did I pay the bill because of the shock and awe and the veneer on this feeling? No, I lost sleep because of that irrational bullshit. I didn't even deal with the issue because of the irrational thing around the outside. How many of you have been so broke? And someone wrote a song about this. I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard the song and I was laughing my ass off. But they wrote a song about how it had a lot of other lyrics in it. But maybe you guys know the song. I would love to hear it again. I can't remember where it came from, but somebody said that they don't want to look at their bank. They're afraid of looking at their bank balance online because they know there's no money in it. I've had phases in my life where I had no money, and I never wanted to see my bank balance at the ATM. I never wanted to see it online. And then I started making money again, and I had stacks of cash in the bank, and it came time to pay the bills, and that old anxiety came around because I was Pavlovianly attaching this time of the month with that fear, right? And so I forced myself to log in because I know I got the money and it's going to be a good experience. But boy, I had to get over that fear, that irrational membrane, to get to the rational act of simply paying my bills. So yours truly has suffered all of this stuff. There's another analogy which is very interesting, which is when you are threatened by someone physically, usually, hopefully, this is a playground story and not something you're getting in real life. But there's a very interesting thing that occurs, and you get your ass beat doing this, so don't be stupid. What always happens in these bullies videos, we'll just go on that realm. The bullies are always torturing these kids in school, and these kids are filming it with their cell phones, right? Some big fat kid picking on some scrawny kid because the fat kid hates himself because his mom didn't teach him not to eat cake. He wants to somehow turn fat into muscle and knowledge of how to fight. And so he's torturing some poor little kid who's feeling bad about himself because he's scrawny. When that little kid cracks that son of a bitch in the chin and he starts to wobble, it's over. The bully will never be a bully again, and the kid will never be bullied again, right? That's a physical analogy, but that's exactly how our brains work when we're all by ourselves in our homes and there's a bill due. Sometimes you have to flip the switch and just say, you know what? I'm the predator, not the bill. I wish I remembered this quote. I'm going to butcher the shit out of this, but there's that saying that, the devil whispers in your ear, you better be careful because the storm is coming. And the person leans over to the devil and says, I am the storm, right? That's you. One of the toughest things to think about in this world, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there is an interesting value to this analogy, which is when I say love, put love in a jar, you can't do it. When I say hold it in your hand, you can't do it. When I say the same thing about fear, all the same things are true. It's an intangible, weird ghost that shows up to mess with us. And we change our lives and we manifest away from what we would normally be doing if the fear wasn't there. All rational beings know that there's good and there's bad in this world. There is harm and there's no harm. Whether or not any supreme being cares about what might be defined as sin, well, we'll let the big guy let us know when it's all over, right? But a lot of you know the theories of demons and angels. I think demons are a very interesting symbol in the thought process of a human being for one very specific, valuable reason, which is to say, if you were to be inundated with fear, to cast away a demon by perhaps calling on the almighty intelligence of the universe to help you, and you are his daughter and you're his son, and he or she is referred to as your father or your mother, however you want to view it, man. I always say the father, personally. But if you can take fears and think of them as demons, the interesting thing is this, and you could be an atheist and still use this term very accurately and keep in your mind some sort of symbol that isn't you, right? I don't care how much a demon shows up around me, unless I'm susceptible to some sort of possession. If that's possible, it's never going to truly be able to live in me. At most, it might whisper in my ear, flow through me, give me some fear, make me lust, or whatever I'm not supposed to be doing, according to my desires for this world, right? You all have a plan about what you want to do with your life. Whether or not you can articulate it, pull it out and put it into words, it doesn't matter. You still have your plan. Could be very simple. Could be super complex. Doesn't matter. And anything you do in your life that isn't part of that plan, it's hopefully you're relaxing because you're not getting your goals. Every once in a while, I'll follow Will Smith. I won't follow him, but I'll watch his videos. And he's putting out some pretty amazing videos in this last year. His confidence can get to me a little bit, but I think it slips into ego every once in a while, but whatever. He's succeeding in the areas that I am viewing him. But he said that there was a point when he decided that he wanted to be a musician, he wanted to be an actor, but whatever he decided he wanted to be, he focused like crazy. And he did a video recently where he said, look, It got to the point where I wouldn't drink a glass of water unless it was part of my plan. Now, what is he really talking about? And he's talking about the ultimate control over his life. He's also talking about investing in his skills so he can get what he wants. He's not simply lusting after it, hoping that things work out. He's focusing, he's investing, he's practicing. Well, I'm going to assume that if he was here right now and I said, well, how much fear did you have that you wouldn't be able to accomplish what you set your mind to, given that he's a very rational human being that creates steps in between giant chasms, right? So he wants to be a rapper, but he is not one at all. So he understands there's little steps he's going to have to practice. He has to get a DJ, Jazzy Jeff, in there to create a beat for him. He's probably going to have to participate in that too. That needs to be us. But if we're constantly being distracted by fear bubbles, it's going to distract us. It's going to delay us. Maybe we'll learn something from it. I'm sure we will. Let me give you another analogy. Have you ever had an ache in your leg? You pulled a muscle, you busted your shin on something, and you look down at your leg and you just feel that achy pain. You're like, God damn, I hate the way that feels. Oh my God, But then you get a toothache, or you get a really bad head cold, and it's in your head. And where's our consciousness? Well, probably the pineal gland has a big role to play with our liaison with our souls, our spirit energy that is our collective consciousness, that is our temporary, that's inside of our temporary vessel, right? That stuff that's in your head, those pains that are in your head are so much more intense than that pain in your leg. I've never lost a limb, but and I'm sure it's extremely painful and very bizarre when you get phantom pain and all that stuff. But if you were to transpose the pain that's in your leg from that into your head cavity, I'd say you'd probably be committed for a little while until whatever's doing that to you would subside, because it's so annoying, right? The reason why I bring that up is that I think that the fears that you have inside yourself are exponentially more intense than the fears you have outside yourself, right? It's probably easier to be terrified in a mall shooting and sleep at night than it is to have that one that's crawled inside your brain. It's just inside the mechanism of how you think. So where do you practice this art? Well, the good thing is you can start today if you have any fears. Hopefully this lesson's absolutely useless to you because you're like, dude, I don't have any fears at all. Screw it. I don't worry. Worry's a waste of my time. And you know what? You'd be right. At my smoke lounge, we watch conspiracy videos a lot. And every once in a while, someone in the room will go, man, I'm really concerned about this. I'm really concerned, and why people are so stupid. I hear that one a lot. Why are people so stupid? And where are these kids? They don't understand that they're fighting the force that's trying to help them. That's a big one right now, right? The help is on the way. The help has already arrived. The help is already starting to be quantified in numbers, and the people that are being helped are reacting as if they're not being helped because they're in the Stockholm Syndrome. Go see that episode. Of their previous captors, and now they're free, and they're looking for the jail cell again. They're looking for the shackles and the chains to put them back on, because that's all they know is a comfort zone, is the torture chamber underneath the house, underneath the pizza parlor. We have to let them detox. But we can start practicing right away. I want you to greet a fear as something that's not you, first and foremost. It is not you. It is not a part of you. It is really not in you. As much as you might think it's in your head, it's not. It's not a toothache. It's not a head cold. It's not in you. It's outside of you. And I want you to start seeing it outside of you. If you're afraid of fire, then think of it as about a cue ball of fire. What you want is it to lose its flame. So what can you do? You can see if it's a cue ball, an 8 ball, a stripy, number 2 ball, or what a number 2 ball is blue, right? But like a 15, 7, whatever. Because then you can start playing the game. You'll get so good at this. And I'll warn you, it's fun. It's really fun. You'll get so good that nothing will scare you. And you'll get an adrenaline rush dealing with fears. Now, we all know the guy that gets on the motorcycle who is probably really young, and he drives it, 180 miles an hour down the carpool lane at night on the 405. And there's a chance the bike will explode. There's a chance that someone will pull in front of them. There'll be debris on the highway, whatever, and he'll lose control and they'll die. Sometimes they'll wear a helmet and very little else, a pair of shorts. That's different. That's different. That's self-imposed fear that creates an adrenaline rush in the blood supply. That's not us. That's not what we're talking about. So don't get that confused, just in case. But now there are people that will shit start because they want to create all that drama. I've talked about that in a previous episode. I'm not talking about that either. This is a clean conversation about you dealing with your issues. So you understand that one. I belabored that for an hour. Now let's talk about ones as we close. There seem to be things that give you anxiety/fears that for no reason at all occur, and you don't know why, and you need them to stop because it's interfering with your life. A fear of something. An irrational fear of something. You saw those shows back in the 90s when they would torture people with their fears. Someone had a fear of clowns. So go on the talk show. In come a bunch of clowns, and they're trying to get them to deal with it because they know that the second that they can hug a clown, it's over for life. They'll never have that fear again, right? Sometimes it's a matter of, or sometimes you can have a simple fix and that you simply think it through. I did an episode a long time ago where I talked about the single moment that I defeated my fear of the dark. And I never had any super fear of the dark or anything, but this was a situation where I was helping to build a spook house on the top floor of this business in my hometown. And the building was probably a good 150 feet long. It was an apartment complex back in the 40s during the baby boom era. It had been unoccupied for decades and decades and decades, but they took each individual room and made it a spook house. Well, I needed to finish my room. And we blacked out every window because it has to be black and it's going to run all day and all night, right? So I had to climb up it was a funny cascading thing of fears, but I crawled up this rusty ass fire escape right on the door that I got to open is a wasp nest. It's in the middle of winter. Well, it's October-ish in Kansas. That's really cold. And these wasps were so frozen. They weren't dead or anything, but they were just barely moving around. So I was like, wow, they're not stinging me. They're not flying. So I just opened the door slowly, go through. That's one fear right there. Definitely had my ass stung quite a bit as a kid. And now I close the door. And as soon as I close the door, you can't see your hand in front of your face. And I know that the first room I'm in is a devil's mouth somebody had made with teeth and stuff. And I got to carefully crawl through, not destroy anyone's stuff. And I got to go 150 feet through all these different rooms. And I had them memorized. Luckily on the left side, it was a little more traversable. My room was the worst because it was there to trip you and stuff. So, but I kind of, meandered through it until I got all the way to the front. And I could see the light, the sun underneath the door and this super steep staircase. Oh man, back in the day, they like to live on the dangerous side with staircases, let me tell you. It's all made of wood, and so you fall, you can break your neck, right? Open the door, let the girlfriend and my friend in, and that was it. It was over forever. So sometimes it can be that easy. If you're still listening, it's probably not that easy. But here's the thing. Some of you have watched Happy Gilmore. This is going to sound a little funny. But you have your happy place, right? Everybody has one. A time in your life when you felt amazing, you felt secure, you felt in control, and you were devoid of anything we would refer to as fear. The challenge is that we'll forget that moment ever happened to us. We forget the referential points that made us feel that way. What was it? Were you warm? Were you snuggled up in a cold room in a bunch of sheets? Were you watching your favorite movie? Were you holding someone's hand? What was it? Try to find ones where you're by yourself, because that'll make it more powerful, right? Sometimes you just need to take a break from what you're thinking about, and you got to go to that place. Think about it. Have it on the tip of your tongue at all times if you're experiencing random acts of fear. Remember where you are. If you have a great life and you're simply worrying yourself into fears, well, just realize there's no such thing as the traffic ticket that you're about to pay because you're due for a traffic ticket. That's the stupidest thing we're taught as kids. Well, you're due, you got a traffic ticket. Well, you were due for one. That's a fucking superstition. Do you realize that? It's just as irrational as all the other bullshit. Don't do that to yourself. You might think that God has a limited amount of fortune for you. Well, God can't possibly give me anything else. Oh, really? Is he running out of stuff to build stuff with? Is he running out of energy to pay attention to you? Really? No, not at all. Even if you're an atheist, the world and the universe has nothing in the way of limits for you. If you're worried about your fortune, then you're the exact kind of person who deserves the fortune. If you're taking it for granted and you're entitled to it and all this other shit, I don't know. The world seems to have a way to spank those people, right? But they don't have any fear that they're going to lose. They just lose. I always tell people who are afraid of flying, because it's easy to rationalize that, right? I say, if you're on a plane and you're worried about crashing, then you're the reason why we're not going to crash. The joke is that the only planes that ever crash, and this is only a joke, is that when you have a whole plane of people that don't think it can crash, that's the one that crashes. And that's why it's so rare. And I say these jokes to people who are in a high state of anxiety on a plane because it makes them laugh. And the second I have them laughing, they totally calm down and they forget they have any fears of flying. It's really funny. I distracted them into a happy place of laughter, right? Now I'm going to borrow a little bit from my Calming Your Soul episode because we're right here. If you have things that happen to you, anxiety attacks that happen to you, a few things I want you to pay attention to. Your health plays a huge role in the balance of your frequencies in your body. Sugar can either create the panic because you don't have enough in you and your body needs it to function, or you have too much and it's converting to energy. And what does energy do if it's not spent? You ever felt antsy to get out? It's because your body's creating a feedback loop of energy created by the calorie conversion of sugar. And remember, carbohydrates, nothing but complex sugars. So you eat a big plate of spaghetti. Well, that's still sugar. In fact, it's the first thing that's ever broken down in your body. Super complex. Just doesn't taste sweet. Fats are the last thing that's processed in your body. So it's carbohydrates, sugars, and fats. Well, fats tend to make you more relaxed, unfortunately. People who drink alcohol too much and too often. Doesn't have to happen the day after you drink. How many people have you known who've drank alcohol and they have crazy, attacky sessions with their family, friends? Part of it's because the body's being attacked. Its blood is being thinned, and so all the organs are ceasing to function properly, slowly. And your body can't rationalize what's going on, so all it says to you is you're being attacked. We're dying. So get angry, because hopefully that'll help you fend off whatever's killing us, because all we can see is what's on the inside. You're the only one that knows where the ship's going. That's why we get angry drunks. But let's say you drink and drink and drink. Maybe it's just a glass of wine at night. Maybe it's too many beers, whatever. You're not high, really. Maybe a little tipsy. And the next morning, the morning after, you start to have a panic attack. Your body is deprived. It's been deprived for days, perhaps. It's thinned your blood. Well, how does your body function? How do you die half the time? Why do you die when someone shanks you with a knife? Why do you die because someone shoots you with a gun? Now, part of that's to just, the gun can actually destroy your organs. They don't work. But if it just punches a hole in you and you just bleed out, you get stabbed. Didn't hit any vital organs, but you're bleeding out. That's how you die. You lose track of your blood. It's on the outside instead of the inside. So watch your health. Watch what you ingest. If you're having panic attacks, start a journal on everything that you eat. And I mean everything. How much water you consume. Your body needs water. It's made of a lot of water, man. You'll find your diet plays a huge role. If you're a very small person and you ingest sugar and your body's really good at metabolizing sugar, remember this, people. Remember this. This is both a confidence builder and it's also some foundation for the science of what we're talking about here. You are here on this planet because your genes rock hardcore, right? You are the byproduct of two human beings that were part of two human beings, or four human beings, part of 8 human beings, etc., all the way back to the beginning of time. And you're here because your ancestors made it through the eye of the needle over and over and over again. If you're a European descendant and you read about the plague, your descendants made it through the plague. You realize that? If you're African, you always killed the lion. You always killed the elk, right? If you're Native American, my God, it's even more intense. You survived all the attacks, all the diseases. You're a refined Native American. Super duper strong. So have faith in your genetics for that one reason. And good genetics will usually metabolize sugar extremely well. But then there's a minimum amount that you need to stay coherent, right? There's hypoglycemic, which is a lack of sugar in your body, and there's diabetic, which is too much sugar in your body. Both people have some form of debilitating mental effect when this happens. Usually the hypoglycemic is more panic attacky. Again, the smaller your body, your dosage is more precise. If you're 6'5", you have a big cushion inside yourself where you can overeat and you can process that, and you can undereat and you have a lot of reserves, right? But even if you're really overweight, that doesn't really factor into it. Your fat is just this suit that's on top of your ripped abs, right? Your abs are the same shape all the time, right? Yes, you can work out and make them be more bulbous, but the idea is if you lose all that weight, you get rock hard abs. At least you get a six-pack. You can get rid of the little plate in front of your belly, right? It's very dangerous to do that, but you can, right? Fears mess with your life. Fears make you do sometimes smart things. But wouldn't you rather do a smart thing when you have control over your mind? When you don't have control over your mind, you do the dumb things. The more creative you are, sometimes that can be an absolute death sentence to your calm state of mind. As I've said a couple times on this show, how many times have you had a relative that says, I can't watch scary movies? Could be a guy. Can't watch scary movies. You go, why can't you watch scary movies? Because it just haunts me, man. I just can't get the vision out of my mind, you know. I've rarely met a girl that can watch a zombie movie or zombie show on TV when Walking Dead was good. Couldn't watch it with me because they would dream about it. And some of these women that I dated would know that they're very, very creative and they understand. It's their creative mind that's actually causing this to happen. But the funny thing is so many people say, I'm not creative on the flip side. And I'm looking at them going, are you kidding me? You are so creative that you're able to take a dark room and manifest inside that room a bunch of zombies that couldn't possibly exist because it's medically impossible. At least before bath salts and Tide Pods. But you know what I mean, right? What's interesting about my path, and a lot of you who've had the same path, some of you are very creative people. We've got amazing musicians, amazing artists in this clique on Facebook. Probably shouldn't use clique because they come back to haunt me, but our followers, our contributors, right? And you know this from personal experience that you can get over your fears. Anyone who's ever walked on stage to sing, man, you're getting over some fears, man. It'll get to the point where you just succeed. That's what you think in your head. I just succeed. Some of you will hear that statement and you'll get angsty just hearing me say that about maybe you. You just succeed. You just win. And the only time you don't is when you buy into the fact that you don't. Baseball is an amazing thing, or softball. My daughter played softball. She did extremely well, but boy, I tell you what, before she did well, she did very badly. She was a pretty big kid for the group of kids that she was playing with. And I watch her go up with a bat. She's a lefty too. She's a little dangerous, when she starts doing it right. And she's struck out all the time. And as a parent, it's very tough because you don't know how your kid's ingesting that as a permanent trait of their capabilities or inabilities, right? But I kept saying, she's going to get it. And when she hits that ball, she is going to murder it. And she's going to go from last on the string of batters to up towards the front. So we didn't just hope and pray that she was going to become a good batter. I took her to a batting cage for probably about 6 months. And she just practiced batting and practiced batting and practiced batting. And the coach, she got a really good coach, Coach Dave, love the guy from Fountain Valley. He's famous. He just started soft pitching it to her. We had a machine, but he would soft pitch it to her really easy. And she'd start connecting and just keeping her eye on the ball. That's all you got to do, man. If you're trying to conquer that beast, just keep your eye on the ball and the brain automatically hits it. It's the craziest thing. I don't give a shit if it's a pro throwing some fucking, drop or some fastball. You'll still hit it. It's the arrogance that makes us look away, or our desire to crush it that makes us close our eyes, and that's when we don't hit it, right? But the second my kid hit a ball in a game, it was over. My kid never struck out again. They won 2 championships in a row. They won one. They didn't get a trophy for just being there, right? Coach walked up to her one day and said, "You know what? I know you just joined the team, and I know you've barely ever played, but guess what? You're the catcher." And he goes, "Here's all your stuff." He goes, "The other girl broke her leg, or broke her arm or some shit, and she wasn't going to be able to play. And the girl she was replacing was amazing." And I'm like, oh my God, is this even possible? I didn't say anything. Because the coach he was on a roll. He had done this 100 times with girls, and he knew he had $3 of his own. And my kid put that crap on. Within a couple games, she was slaying it. Because no one told her she couldn't do it. Sometimes our fears are built out of people being assholes to us, or us not ever having someone lean over and go, "You just succeed, man. Just let it happen. Just let it happen. You're only here because you're built out of genetics that succeeded forever," right? In one way, when I talk to my students, sometimes I'll lead off with this whole statement about their genetics just so they'll listen to me, right? But I'll tell them, I'll say, look, what happens during a championship, like an elimination championship, when you watch drag race cars do a championship or a poker game, there's no failure. The guy who wins at the end, or the girl who wins at the end, has always won every single race that particular season. That's how they stayed in the playoffs, right? Just boom, 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 boom. Now, there's sports where you can lose and you can still stay in, but there's a lot of competitions out there where if you lose once, you're out of the game. Well, think about the person who wins. They've never lost, ever. Otherwise, they wouldn't have won at the very end. Well, every single one of you is someone who has always won. We all are, right? You might say, well, how do you define winning in life? And I was like, okay, because you're born. Second you're born, you're a winner because you made it. And things take us out young sometimes, and it's nothing to do with the person. Even if a child gets sick and passes away, it's because we as a society failed them. It has nothing to do with them. It has nothing to do with their genetics. The genetics didn't determine necessarily how the universe was going to behave, right? So see yourself as a winner every single day. I know it sounds corny, but it's the truth. I'm going to get the observed reality one out first before this episode, and I want you to reflect on that when you think about fears. Fears are brought to you from the outside of your body to the front of your body. They're not inside you, even though you might mistaken them for being inside you. And I've used that unfortunate reference during this episode, but I want you to think of it as coming to you from the outside. Because you'll be fine, right? You'll be completely fine before a panic attack, right? And then all of a sudden it just happens. And you may biologically feel it grow inside of you. But I assure you, at some subconscious level, it was brought to you from the outside. Perhaps you were reminded of something you need to do. Oh my God, I got a file for that thing. Oh geez, I got to send that email. Oh man, I need to send those envelopes. I've got a few of those right now. I'm supposed to send a few envelopes. I hate sending envelopes. I hate it. But it takes 2 seconds when I do it. Externalize your fears. They're not in you. They're outside you. When they happen, slow down time, would you? Just like we do on this show. Just say, I'm doing a deep thoughts to this thing. You slow it down. You look at that ball of fire. And you know what? First thing I'm going to do is put this thing out. We're going to find out what ball it is. And then we're going to knock the shit out of it. And we're going to win. And once you do it one time, just like my daughter hitting the ball that she never thought she could hit, she conquered that fear forever. And every single one of you have had that ball that came to you, that freaked you out, but you hit it anyway, and you won. So if you've ever succeeded anywhere in your life, ever, then you know you can succeed. So it doesn't matter if you change subject matter, you can succeed, right? I've beat up this story a little bit too much recently, and I think it fits here, so pardon me for repeating this story. But the first time I ever sang live with a band, you know, karaoke is one thing, but singing with a band is a whole different beast, right? I did it in front of a bunch of famous rockers that I really like, and one of them was my best friend in the whole world, right? And it was for a wedding, and so it's like, you don't want to screw up someone's wedding, right? You don't want to sing crappy, and they're like, yeah, everything was great till that kid came on and sang, right? But where did I find that confidence? Where the hell did I find the confidence to walk on stage and do something, go from singing songs in my house over and over and over, so I knew how they worked, to getting on stage? And then the drummer messes up the song on the second song, but I still continued, and we you know, the guitar player was the groom, and he was amazing. And so he and I started just riffing Led Zeppelin stuff, and he started playing. I just started singing. I looked over my bass player buddy, and he's a real good friend of mine. He's just laughing. He's like, keep singing, man, keep singing. And we managed to resurrect the performance into something very dynamic and nothing anyone had ever seen before. It's because I went back to all the other times I've succeeded in life, and I just said, oh, I win. You know, I succeed. That's what I do. It doesn't mean I'm always going to succeed, but hell, even when you fail under those circumstances, it feels a shitload better. At least you go, man, I put everything into it I could. It was either going to happen or it wasn't going to happen. It's not that it was meant to happen and not meant to happen. Take those superstitious crap phrases out of your life, okay? Because if you think shit's not meant to happen or meant, you know, we say it, I'll say it too, but we really shouldn't take it deeply to heart. I don't think a lot of us really embed that in our souls, but I know some friends who do. You don't always fail just because you don't get there, right? Every successful person, Will Smith's been harping on this like crazy. You learn way more when you fail to how to get it right, man. So don't fear some inevitable failure. And once you stop fearing failure, you'll find your fears just start to drift away. Oh, you don't want to get to a point you don't give a shit about your responsibilities. That's obviously one of our biggest problems right now. But I think that the kids of today that are having a problem, what we call the snowflakes, it's because they do care. They just have been let down by society to give them any solutions at all. Any advice like this advice, right? This isn't like PhD level advice, but it's something to hang on to. Why are people lashing out at their saviors? They don't want to be caught failing in the first place. And you're catching them. If you give them advice, you're catching them failing. At least that's what they think, right? Kids will do that all to you all the time, man. You have a totally successful child, and all you want to do is get with them and say, you're doing great, kid. I love watching your success. But in their mind, they've got some other goal in mind, and they don't think that what they're doing is a success. And you're like, just relax, would you? All that stuff's going to happen because you succeed. That's what you do. I think when I see people living in fear, when I see people having a moment in their life where they don't control their life, it frustrates the shit out of me. I, of course, want to give them any advice that will help them. It's not so I can put a feather in my cap and say, I've helped X number of people. I don't give a shit about that. I want to live in a world when I walk out my door that everyone on my block is in control. Everyone on my block is, hey man, you know, it's not going to be like Truman Show where everything's absolutely perfect. We don't want that world. I don't think we want that world until maybe we ascend someplace else where we can have some help dealing with euphoria forever, right? Do me this favor. If you make it to the end of this episode, all of us have conquered fear, right? Every single one of us. As I said at the beginning of the episode, many things in life can be completed in different ways. If you got a way you've dealt with fear that works for you, that's an archetype you use every single time, put it in the comments, would you? Right? I don't need you to tell me how great this episode is or how bad it is. I just need you to help each other, right? Because I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to put your feather in my cap and go, I have a new way to do this. Boom. And it made sense to me. And sometimes you'll suggest something that someone doesn't understand, so that one doesn't work for them. Who cares? Maybe you have 10 different ways to deal with 10 different things. And 9 out of 10, they don't make any sense to somebody. But number 3 is a son of a bitch. Wow, that changed my life. So if you don't have a YouTube channel yourself, but you're like, man, or maybe you do, link to something in your channel. But if you don't have a channel and you don't ever see yourself having one and going through this process, let me tell you, it's a process. What you can do is just leave a comment. Spread some love. My closing statement will be this. If you're atheists, which I don't think I have too many listeners that are atheists, but if you're there, bear with me for a second. Let's go with collective energy if you're an atheist, okay? You're not alone, people. I don't care if you don't know another human being on this planet. You don't have a partner. You don't have a friend. Your family's gone or you're estranged from your family. You're not alone. The universe itself is a gigantic information bubble. All the advice that anyone's ever thought travels around like the wind. And the wind that hit you in the face 100 feet down the street is coming at my face. And as long as we search within the wind for the information and the solutions that we need, you'll be amazed that you'll find it. A lot of you already know this is the way it works. Some of it's the law of attraction, but a lot of it's just the search. Write a good search algorithm. I have the guts to ask the universe or God, I ask God personally, for solutions. You can ask for 2 types of solutions. In my game, the way I play the game, I say, look, there are ones that you want me to do personally, that I need to do personally to get over my own issues. But maybe there's just something that needs to happen to you. God, could you just give me an opportunity? Something that just drops itself right in front of my face, and I'm going to recognize it. Help me recognize it when it happens. You know, if something's dropping in front of my face that I'm supposed to view as dark and unproductive, then please help me recognize that. But if you're dealing with fear, ask for perspective to not see it as fear. And you'll be blown away how within hours, minutes, and maybe days at the most, you'll find new strength you never knew you had, right? What if God has a prime directive? I mean, I think he does, right? He's not here. He's not here walking around, let's just say. I don't mean to say he's not here, but he's not in your face. Not George Burns walking around with a cigar. So maybe the game works like this. You don't ask, you don't get. Well, you get the bare minimum, you get survival. Sure, there's people that love you and take care of you and watch out for you. But how could you possibly get a piece of agnostic advice from the universe if you don't ask for it? Go see my episode on Gnosticism if you want to see more of my thoughts on that. It's an ecosystem. It's a population of thoughts. We're not alone, no matter if you wanted to be. You couldn't be. Otherwise, you'd cease to exist, in my opinion. I know you feel me. If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. There's audio, video. For those of you listen to it on audio, I am putting out a little shout out to review the channel if you dig it. I always put this shit at the end because that way nobody who hates the episode is going to get to the end. Isn't that a beautiful little filter? Reviews help people have confidence in the material. And if you constantly find this material useful for you, there's a chance that other people find it useful for them. For everyone who posts, the comment that says, "I can't believe your channel doesn't have more." All right, do me a solid. Get out there and just share links. And try to be specific. You got a friend, like the biggest one that I share the most, there's two that I share a lot. Someone will do a post about suicide, and someone close to them has died, and they're worried that people are having these thoughts and no one's talking about it, which is what I talk about in the episode. So I will share that suicide episode right in the thread, and I'll get really good replies. The other one's alcoholism. That one is probably shared more privately, but maybe you have a forum where you can share it more publicly. But try to find something that's right on target for someone and post it in there so they can get a chance to just extend the conversation like we do on this show, right? Because your comments are sitting right there, folks. You could have made a comment 2 years ago. It's still right there like it was yesterday. There you go. Pass your advice along with the stream of consciousness that's here. We do have a locked Facebook group up there, so get in there. Membership is not a big deal. I'm not sitting around sniffing you really hardcore. Sometimes things look fake and I go take a look. Yeah, there's a bunch of Rolex watches, but other than that, you're in. I monitor everything you post, so nothing's going to get through that's not cool. And I don't agree with everyone's opinion in the Facebook page, and that's what's awesome. But everyone is so cordial. And we've had total knockdown dragouts in the Facebook, and I let it happen. And people most often will come around and say they're sorry, or they'll just chill out quietly and they continue posting without getting all irate. There is a Patreon page. The cool thing about the Patreon is that unless I'm doing a really rapid fire episode or I want to get it out that day, you're going to get 2 to 3 days preview of all the episodes. And like the last batch, I posted 3 episodes in preview mode for 2 or 3 days before anyone else saw them. So if you like that exclusivity, $1 gets you that exclusivity. So anyhow, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you on the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.